Why does your JavaScript code wait for a response from an API before it actually moves on with its life? Right? Why the hell does it do that? All right, if I'm being honest with you, I don't even really know what that means. I like I have seen I've worked with a lot of JavaScript Node. I've used TypeScript before in the past, and I always see this async, this await, and I know I learned it in the past when I was learning web development and React and stuff like that, but I could never ever wrap my mind around it. I've used it. Knowing Did I know why I was using it? Not really. Did I know when to use it? Not really. And that is my bad because guess what? I have the power of the internet. I have the power of AI. I have the power of research at my fingertips. And I could have looked it up whenever, so many times. But I said, you know what? Let's just get the job done and let's move on. And that is not the right way to do it. So today, what I want to do, I'm going to share with you, and I'm going to share with myself, if I'm being quite honest with you, right? What the hell are asynchronous functions in JavaScript and Node when you're using TypeScript, and as well as other languages? I know they have it in Python, they have it in C Sharp, have it in Java, but I am not familiar with it whatsoever, and I need to do a much better job. And this probably happens for you. As long as you can get it to work, then you're like, all right, let me move on. I'm going to figure this out later. But then we never come back to the figuring it out later. And I think that is a very important thing to do. So with that being said, let me be the first to welcome you to another episode of Software Explorations, concept and overviews hosted by your truly Tech Coach Ralph, where we're engineered to win. Like I said, we're going to be getting into what are asynchronous functions in JavaScript, how they work, how to use them. We're going to be going through a document that breaks it all down. And like I said, hopefully it helps you, but this is mainly for me to get a much better understanding of how all this stuff works. All right. So let's get into it. With that being said, let me just throw this out there. Within the next few weeks, we're going to be dropping a lot of videos, but by a lot of videos, a lot of software exploration videos, concept overviews, these coming Wednesdays on the cloud. The video that I released recently on how the cloud works, the infrastructure, had some questions about S3. So I'm going to be creating some videos about, or not S3, but about cloud storage. I'm going to be creating some videos about how to sign up for AWS, or AWS, Azure, Google Cloud Platform, how to create buckets, how to upload files to them, whether you're doing it through the console or doing it through command line, or whether you're doing it through code. So look out for those. That's why I highly encourage you, if you haven't done so already, to like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you can know every time we drop new content, and we go live on this channel a lot. So do that so that you do not miss out on all these videos. You can actually get some hands-on work in so that you can actually start getting a lot more closer to these concepts. But with that being said, let's jump into this video. What the hell are asynchronous functions anyways, all right? Why does your JavaScript code wait for a response from an API before it moves on with its life, before it moves on with the code, right? So let's jump into our presentation for today. The purpose of this video is to talk about async functions, why they exist, and how to use them in modern development. Our agenda for today: the background of asynchronous functions, what is async and await, common use cases, and some gotchas, and the best practices for using asynchronous methods, functions, programming. All right. So let's get into what is asynchronous programming. And let's use this as an example, right? Synchronous versus asynchronous. In this amazing AI generated picture, we have this beautiful lady who is doing laundry at the same time as cooking up a wonderful meal. What makes this asynchronous? Because it's multitasking, right? You have that. So you have you can get the laundry started, and I'm sure many people do this. They can get the laundry started, putting in the clothes, the soap, whatever else you need, fabric softener, have that running. And now they go and do another task while that is happening. So they can, so in this instance, like they go and they start cooking a meal. And then let's say while they put the meal to cook, there's a waiting time. They go and do something else. Maybe they go and put the laundry that's being washed in the dryer, put another load in there. I don't know, who knows whatever else, doing things, multiple things at once while one thing is happening, another thing starts happening. That is asynchronous. Compared to synchronous, where it is one after the other, decision based. So it's like, all right, we do this, and based on the results of that, we only do this or that. We're not going to be having different lanes of work at the same time. It's only one after the other. We have to wait until something is done, until we move on to the next step, which sometimes that is a totally valid thing to do. However, for the necessity of efficiency and speed inside of these fast computing things, we have to use asynchronous when it makes sense, and then synchronous in the times that's when necessary, right? So let's continue. JavaScript has a single threaded nature, meaning that by nature, JavaScript is going to be synchronous, where it's just one after the other, one after the other. Now, why does working asynchronously matter? Well, if we have to if we have to have these functions where they're doing a long call, and then we have to wait, it's going to make our program inefficient. It's going to make things take forever. It's going to make our customers unhappy. So we need to find a way to have a better usability, especially like, because JavaScript used widely online. So if we are doing these API calls and these different functions where we just have to wait forever to get a response, people are not going to want to use our application, right? So it also matters because it's handling slow operations like network requests or file reads. So network requests, let's say we have our application, right? And it's integrating with Instagram. And we have to go to Instagram and do an API call, wait for a response. There's latency in there, open up a file, there's latency in there. And that's why asynchronous calls matter. That's where they come in, all right? All right, so async functions, the basics. Definition: functions declared with async keyword, they return a promise. And we're gonna actually jump into what exactly is a promise, because I have heard this promise thing for so long, but as I was putting this together, it clicked to me. It clicked to me why it's called a promise, and then it started making a lot more sense, which is why I should have done this software exploration such a long time ago. Shame on me. All right, but let's keep reading. So we have the await keyword, which pauses function execution until the promise resolves. All right. So, and we'll figure that out as well. And here is an example of how an async function looks. It looks it can look a little differently based on how you're programming, because in today's day and age, you don't really need to use the function keyword. And but that is for another time. In general, async function, the name of the function, and then you have the parentheses in case you need to pass in any parameters into your function. And then you're going to say await a request that you make. A fetch request is like a get request. And then you're going to say the data is equal to await, and then the response dot the rest, which normally stands for response dot JSON, and then you're going to return the data. Okay. So with that being said, let's take a look. Let's look under the hood about what is a promise, because understanding what the promise is going to make it so much easier to understand what asynchronous functions are. And like, that's why when I was doing this helped me. I'm like, oh man, why did I wait so long to get such a better understanding of this? Okay, so a promise in JavaScript is an object that represents the eventual completion or failure of an asynchronous operation and its resulting value. What the hell does that mean? Well, happy that you asked, because we have an amazing example of that. All right, so think of a promise like this. A promise is like ordering food at a restaurant. You place the order, start an async task. So placing the order is your async function. You get a receipt of your orders placed. That's your promise. And you continue on with your life. Later, you know what? We're going to put even a little bit more modern, right? Let's say you are sitting at home and you are starving, but you don't want to go out because you're binge watching some new show on Netflix, or you are binge watching the Tech Coach Ralph channel. You're like, there is so much content, so much game in here that I can't even step away to go get me some food. So I'm gonna order some Uber Eats while I soak up all of this information. Fair. I don't blame you for that whatsoever. So let's say that the promise is like ordering food on Uber Eats. You place your order on Uber Eats. That's the start of your async task, your async function. You get a receipt that your order was placed on Uber Eats. And now you just wait. You just go back to binge watching Tech Coach Rob channel. Shout out to you. Later on, the food arrives. You have your Uber delivery person say, hey, we're delivering. We're 5 minutes away. We're going to be dropping the food at your door. The promise is fulfilled. Or something goes wrong. Something goes wrong. No. Something goes wrong. And you never get your food. The promise is rejected. Maybe the restaurant ran out of the food you ordered. Maybe you really, really wanted that triple stacked burger so that you can get that energy that you need to continue binge watching the Tech Coach Rob channel, because it is a lot of fascinating information. But guess what? There were many other people watching the Tech Coach Rob channel, binge watching with you, and they ordered the last burger and they said, no burger for you. Bruh. I'm sorry. This channel has that effect on people, right? So you can either have your order fulfilled, your triple stack burger is delivered, or it's rejected because there's no more. You never get your burger, right? Your promise is rejected. They broke their promise to you.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
So it's hard. It's hard out here, right? So let's get into the technical definition. A promise is a JavaScript object it has three states. It can be pending. The operation is in process, hasn't been completed yet. It can be fulfilled. The operation completed successfully. Or you have the status of rejected. The operation failed. It happens. All right, so let's jump into the syntax, the basic syntax of how a promise looks. All right, so the constant, so you define a constant of my promise and new promise, and then you have it can be resolved or rejected. So what happens if the promise is successful, if it's resolved, the status that we had up here of fulfilled, which it resolves, or if the promise is rejected, what to do? So this function says we're creating a constant variable called success, and if success is equal to true. If it's successful, then you do the resolve that it worked. If it is not successful, then you do the rejection that it failed. So it's passing in resolve, reject, it failed, right? So consuming a promise says my promise, which is this promise right here, right? This constant that you define, the variable for my promise, which is okay, and it's saying my promise, then the result that we got from it, console log the result, or catch the error, console, and then you log the error, right, as an error. So why should we use promises? And we'll probably have to dive in a little bit deeper into the whole promise thing, because it can be quite confusing. But understand, from what I've seen with promises, they're actually like they're built into the asynchronous function, so you don't have to like actually write the actual promise code. But understanding how promises work is going to make us understand a lot better how these asynchronous functions work, right? So why use promises? Why the hell should I use all right, this might be a more deeper question. Should you ever make a promise in life in general? That is the question. Should we make promises? Why use promises? Why make promises? Because JavaScript is asynchronous and single-threaded. You don't want to block everything while waiting for a slow task like fetching data from a server. Imagine that. A promise versus a callback. Callbacks are older and can get messy with callback hell. Callback hell. Imagine that. Promises are cleaner and chainable. So, you like chain smokers, you can chain promises onto one another. I don't know. That sounds like how you get into gambling debt. You're like, oh, I promise you, I'll pay this. Just one more bet, and then you make another promise, and then you lose, and you make another promise, and you lose, and now you are in promise debt, so up to your eyeballs in promises. All right, don't mind me. I'm just messing around. It says modern JavaScript often uses async/await, which is built on top of promises. So that's what I was just telling you, where you have you don't need to focus as much on the code for promise because it is baked into the async and the await. However, we should have a very good understanding of how promises work so that when we're using the async and the await, we know exactly what we're doing, what we're getting into. Okay, we're definitely going to spend a lot more time using these async and awaits. I'm probably on a live stream now that I'm getting a much better understanding. It's going to be a lot easier to rationalize what exactly I'm doing when I'm writing this code. And I'll tell you this, right? The reason that this came about is because as I was working on the code with my tech barbarians, I kept on getting hung up on like when to use a promise, when to not use a promise. I was writing some code somewhere else as well, and I was getting stuck on that. And I saw that, now I remember what it was. We're working on this project, right? And I'm like, okay, so this is what this means, and now it's making a lot more sense, right? So, what are some real world use cases in development for asynchronous calls, for async and awaits promises? So API calls with fetch or Axios. I used Axios when I was building the Urban Dictionary of Economic Data in order to make my API calls, get those API calls and put them in various spots. Database queries, for example, using Firebase, Mongo database drivers, MongoDB drivers, things like that. Reading and writing files in Node, handling delays with set timeout inside async functions, chaining async operations in sequence or in parallel. So those are the different ways that asynchronous calls are used in the real world, right? So what about error handling in async functions? That is very, very important because a lot what I've seen when I don't properly write my code, which I have to go back and modify until it works, is that the async, like the code, the JavaScript program will just hang. It won't just exit naturally. It'll just hang because I am not properly handling my async functions, right? So we have the try catch block with async and awaits, and we also have handling rejected promises. So let's go look at the try catch real quick. And the handling of rejected promises. So this is pretty much saying this async function is called get user, and we're saying try and constant. You said the variable name is response, and it's saying await fetch from the path of the endpoint path of API/users. Now we're going to say user equals await, and then the response.json, the response from this API call, and then return user. So if this await gets returned, JSON is going to return the user, which we can use that somewhere else. However, if this fails in here, then we're going to catch the error and we're going to log to the console error fetching user, and then we're going to pass in what the actual error was. Okay, so very basic try catch. It's in pretty much every single language, but any language that uses the async and the awaits, that's how we're going to be handling the rejected promises. That's how we're gonna handle the error states. Okay. So what are some best practices and common pitfalls? And I think the first one is the biggest one that we always fall victim to. That is, don't forget your awaits. So many times you don't put the await and you get returned right away the actual promise. And it's like, it looks like there's some weird code that you can't read it. So that's why you need to pass in the await. When you pass in the await, then it's going to synchronously, it's going to pass in the what is the results of that promise, not just the code for the promise, but what is the results. Avoid blocking parallel request. Use promise.all. That I'm not familiar with the promise.all. We'll have to look into that, but avoid blocking parallel requests. Use promise.all. So I'm guessing promise.all avoids blocking parallel requests, right? That's my guess. It says keep async functions modular and beware of unhandled promise rejections. And that's where I think the unhandled promise rejections is where the function never exits and never closes, and that's where we have hell, right? All right, so advanced concepts, which we're not gonna really dive deep into that, but optional means that optional means that we're going to dive into that later on. Top level awaits in ES 2022 modules. Async IIFE, immediately invoked function expressions. I'm not familiar with that. We'll definitely have to do some more research. Async iterators with for await of, not familiar with that. So these advanced concepts, after we get a much better understanding of the asynchronous, the await, the promises, we're going to dive into these advanced concepts as well. So look for those in the future. That's why I tell you guys you have to subscribe to the channel, because we are definitely going to be coming out with a lot more information to help us better understanding all of this, right? So let's wrap it up. Summary of today. Asynchronous functions, simplify working with promises. So using async functions, we don't have to write out that whole promise code and multi-layered of like, okay, first I get the promise, then once I get the promise, now I have to resolve it, then I have to interact with what to do then and to catch and all that. Just use the async function and everything happens in there. It says they make your code more readable. The async function make your code more readable, especially for sequential async operations, and mastering async and await is essential for real world JavaScript development. So the next steps is at some point we're going to have a live stream where we're actually going to be writing some JavaScript code, putting hands on for asynchronous functions and awaits and all that good stuff. All right. But with that being said, we're going to get out of here. You guys, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Let me get back to full screen. And there we have it, folks. There we have it. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really appreciate you guys rocking with me. Did I get anything wrong in here? Because like I said, I'm learning this. Maybe my terminology was a little off. Maybe I need to go and fix some things. Let me know, and let me know your thoughts. Are you familiar with async functions? How do you like them? Do they work well for you? Is there a way that I can better explain this? Please let me know. Drop me a comment in the video and we can go from there. But with that being said, I'm going to get out of here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Do me a big favor on your way out. If you haven't done so already, like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know every time we go live and drop new content. As well, go to techcoachdrop.dev, sign up for exclusive information. I'm going to be releasing a lot of information on how to prepare for interviews, how to look for jobs, how to during the interview, how to answer questions. That's a big problem that people have. How to answer questions, how to ask questions in interviews, how to follow up on interviews as well, and go from there, right? But with that being said, I'm out of here. You guys have a wonderful time. Check out techcoachdrop.dev again. TechCoachdrop, we are out.
Oh, my code, my love, you're a mystery. Every function tells our history. In the syntax, I see your grace. Every bug's a trial, but we embrace. Every bracket holds a secret. Every semicolon holds its weight. Line 22, oh, you're divine. You're the heartbeat in this tangled rhyme. Your structure's smooth, you make me whole. In your logic, I lose control. You speak in silence, yet you scream so loud. In the errors, I'm lost yet so proud. Conditionals like whispers in the night. But when they run, it feels so right. I debug our laughing through the pain. We'll iterate again. Line 22, oh, you're divine. You're the heartbeat in this tangled rhyme. Your structure's smooth, you make me whole. 'cause I'm lost yet so proud. Conditionals like whispers in the night, but when they run, it feels so right. I debug our love and